Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Almost hidden in the top left-hand corner of this painting, the artist Paul Gauguin has written in French these three questions. Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Like many other people, I have puzzled over the nature of human existence for a long time, and my work as a documentary filmmaker has given me opportunities to consider these great mysteries from many different angles. And I've found increasingly that some of the most helpful and challenging contributions to my quest have come from the work of the Austrian philosopher and educationalist Rudolf Steiner. This film is about Steiner's life and about the work that his ideas and insights have inspired in all areas of human life. Ideas that challenge us to ponder on the true nature of the human being. In Gauguin's words, what are we? Steiner would probably add, and what might we become?
Rudolf Steiner challenges us to be more conscious and also, I think, to ground our consciousness in the warmth of heart. And I feel one of the most important things about Steiner is actually that he encourages us to bring thinking and feeling together, so head and heart together.
I think Rudolf Steiner was a realist and a very practical person. I think he saw that he was planting seeds for the future.
For me, meeting the work of Rudolf Steiner was like finding water in the desert, because I had searched and searched through many different spiritual paths, very much in the East and also in the West, including the spiritual path of modern science.
I can't think of anybody else who simultaneously follows the whole philosophical and scientific tradition within the West and within modernity, studies it carefully, it becomes very competent in its different disciplines, and at the same time is clearly a mystic.
In one place, Rudolf Steiner said, if you would like to access higher wisdom, you have to unlearn everything that you have accumulated thus far. And to those of us with degrees and credentials and so on, it's a humbling moment. This notion of unlearning the conventional knowledge that is around us and being open in a kind of vulnerable place to a different way of seeing.
Rudolf Steiner was ahead of his time during his time, and he's actually ahead of his time even in this time. Now, he's been dead for almost 100 years.
After a little time, I'll have half Q if R is equal.
I think one of the greatest challenges that Rudolf Steiner poses to us today is a challenge that he lived with in his own life, namely the challenge to battle against sectarianism.
Yes, he felt sorry because he wanted to help people, but he wanted more than this. He wanted to let them free. So that's the essential point. It's the freedom. And you can help people and give them your own treasure, but finally they live out from your treasure and they are dependent. And that's the last thing Steiner wanted to have, dependent people.
I think the challenge for me is to individualize what he has given. As he was in Norway, he almost always in his talks said, "Don't believe what I'm saying, You have to try it in life. Try it in life. And for me, that's my inner direction. I have to try it out and not just take it for granted it is like this. And then life becomes so exciting.
I think really Steiner is about love. But it's hard to get to that realization because of so many thoughts. You know, so many thoughts. But when I think of him, I don't always think of the thoughts, though I'm impressed by them, of course. I think much more of this man, you know, traveling on drafty trains in the middle of the night to go to the next city to meet with, you know, 9 people who are trying to figure something out, or people just scratching at him constantly for help. So he was a servant. So he wasn't a privileged person, he was a servant. So I think it's about love, really.
Rudolf Steiner's influence, particularly through his indications about education, agriculture and medicine, is increasingly apparent. There are 7 Rudolf Steiner Waldorf schools in India and over 1,000 worldwide, plus communities for those with learning difficulties, as well as hundreds of farmers working with his suggestions of how to not only produce healthier food, but also how to heal the earth in the process. Waldorf schools, biodynamic agriculture, Velida, Demeter, Hauschka, Camp Hill, these names are increasingly familiar all over the world. In South India, I visited a group of small-scale farmers learning about the influence not just of the sun and the moon on plant growth and health, but also of the planets, a reminder of what in many parts of the world is still not totally forgotten. Rudolf Steiner shared this knowledge, in part based on traditional wisdom, in a course of lectures to farmers in Central Europe in 1924, a year before he died. An awareness of the influence of the planetary constellations, and including when you sow what, is also central to biodynamic agriculture, a worldwide movement informed and inspired by that course of lectures, delivered at a time when farmers were already expressing concern about the effect that chemical fertilizers were having on the soil and on the health and quality of their produce.
The beauty of Dr. Rudolf Steiner is that he was not just a philosopher living in a world of ideas and just philosophizing and just thinking. He brought all these ideas to practical human activity, whether it's agriculture, education, medicine, architecture.
Jakes is president of the Biodynamic Association in India and has his own farm, but spends more and more of his time in China and Taiwan, as well as in India, helping small family farms to improve the quality of their land and crops and to survive financially in a culture that has increasingly encouraged farmers to use expensive pesticides and high-yielding, chemically dependent seeds. These seeds have to be purchased each year, bringing an end to the practice of farmers producing their own. Dependency on the multinationals has forced a huge number of Indian farmers into bankruptcy, and many even to suicide. Jakes went on to tell me how many of Steiner's philosophical and spiritual teachings, as well as their practical applications, felt very familiar to people in India, in particular the belief in reincarnation and karma. Where do we come from? Where are we going? Despite the many challenges and seeming setbacks that we may face, the idea that we live and learn and grow through many lifetimes is an ancient teaching. So too, that the universe is alive and has purpose and meaning. This awareness that there is more to reality than meets the eye was simply and imaginatively expressed to me 5,000 miles away from South India, through an encounter at a biodynamic farm in England, on the edge of the Ashdown Forest in Sussex.
There's nothing nasty goes on these raspberries then, yeah? Nothing at all. The only thing that we put on these raspberries are two preparations, something called 500 and 501. 500 is the horn manure preparation and 501 is the silica preparation. And they're sprayed at the beginning of the season and then when there's fruit coming.
Is the whole thing about the sort of planets and raspberries, I mean, that obviously makes sense to you, does it?
Does it make sense? No, it doesn't make sense. But bringing in the forces of the whole of the cosmos and the whole of the universe absolutely makes sense. I don't understand the minutiae of it, and I don't need to understand. But what I need to really know and believe is that I'm not alone in this garden working to grow all this. And that's for me is what's important.
Liz is in charge of the fruit and vegetables at Plawhatch Farm. Her sense that she's not alone echoes Steiner's many references to an invisible realm that supports and sustains not only the life of plants and animals, but humanity itself. What was very visible at Plawhatch Farm on the day we filmed was a group of 9-year-olds from the Steiner Waldorf School in Brighton. Farming is one of the subjects on the curriculum for Class 3 in all Steiner schools. In charge of the dairy herd at Plawhatch is Tom Ventham.
For me, I've come into biodynamics quite late on in life. Okay, I was brought up in a very different way. And,
but in agriculture?
In agriculture, very much so. Brought up on a farm. And I've had a lot of inspiration from working in Africa. And it was while I was in Africa that I came across the whole biodynamic movement. And what it's done for me is really encouraged me to look within myself and within the farm, and rather than look outward, because I think all through my life I've been sort of conditioned to look outwards, look at production and look at what's actually materially happening. Whereas what I've discovered is that if you actually look within and make sure that sits comfortably within oneself and within your heart, then everything that comes out is going to be just fine. And I think that's what the whole biodynamic movement has meant to me. It's changed me to look inwards.
So you mean you're a better farmer as a result, then?
Yeah, but I used to measure milk yields, but I don't now. It's a disaster. Because if you measure a milk yield, then you're thinking that actually that's a measure of success. It's not about milk yield, it's about the animal as a whole. And so it's changed the way I farm into a much more qualitative approach rather than the production approach.
As with all biodynamic farms, Plawhatch is farmed organically, natural feed for the animals and no pesticides or artificial fertilizers on the land. And the emphasis is on diversity. Not just cows, not just raspberries. There's also a cheese-making operation at Plawhatch Farm, and as a community-supported enterprise, they have over 600 loyal and committed customers who own shares in the venture. Plawhatch's milk and yoghurt are sold in their farm shop, along with Liz's fruit and vegetables. I asked one of the apprentices what she made of Steiner's ideas.
They're hugely far out. And it's very difficult to actually read a book that's written by Steiner. Everybody I've met struggles with it. And even when you can manage to read the book, to accept his ideas is another challenge as well, because, yes, some of them come across as quite loopy. And I don't think he wanted anybody to blindly accept what he was saying. I think you've got to try things out and just see if it sits well with you. And also adapt it. I think we need to be flexible as well. And feel our way through the work, work with the preparation, spray the fields, but also personalize it, put your own love into it at the end of the day. I don't think there's any point in just like reading the book and just using it like a manual. And he had some inspiring ideas, and it's quite difficult to understand why we spray the fields of these bizarre combinations of ingredients. But you give it a try, trust it, you know, have some faith that maybe it's going to help, and then see if it works. I think we've got to be open and flexible.
To be open and flexible and to trust. A young Dutch apprentice is doing just that. For an hour he will stir this substance, which contains a preparation known as 500, cow manure that has been buried in a cow horn for 6 months over the winter, when the crystalline forces in the earth are at their strongest and therefore most receptive to cosmic influences. Through rhythmic stirring, so Steiner indicated, forces within the preparation are released into the water, which, when sprayed on the land, has a dynamic effect on the soil and therefore on plant growth. Cattle, along with pigs, sheep and poultry, are the focus at Tablehurst Farm, the sister enterprise to Plaw Hatch. Between them they farm on 700 acres, most of which are held by a land trust and not privately owned, thereby guaranteeing long-term security. Steiner frequently warned against treating land, and indeed capital and labour, as a commodity. At Tablehurst and Plaw Hatch, they grow their own feed and produce enough manure and compost to fertilise both farms. The mixture of animals, crops, fruit and vegetables enhances, it seems, the health and well-being of the farm as a whole. Peter Brown is one of the farmers at Tablehurst. On biodynamic farms, cows keep their horns, which are seen as an important sense organ, helping to give each animal an awareness of its surroundings and of its own metabolism and identity.
If a cow doesn't have its horns, it can't actually feel anything. It doesn't know who it is as an individual. And that's why most farmers take the horns off, so they can keep more animals in, but also it takes away the cow's sense of who she is. Then that cow won't mind standing so close to each other like that. But these cows, they need about 2 or 3 meters around each other. If anybody goes into that space, they don't like it at all. So they're very strong individuals. Look at Orchid here. Nobody's going to go near her. Even if we go near her, she wants to get out of the way. But that's a very nice thing. Because if she's nice and individual, she has a very good immune system because she knows who she is. She feels good about herself and she knows what she's doing. Nothing can really touch her. Nothing can go wrong with her. But if we take her horns off, it's a bit like having lobotomy. Suddenly she doesn't know who she is. Actually, she doesn't really care who she is. She's lost one of her major sense organs. And who cares? Who cares what I eat? Who cares who I stand next to? And in fact, I don't need to last very long. And that's how most of our dairy cows are today. Just like that. Where she should go on until she's about 15 years old, easily. Very strong. Never use any drugs on her, never spray any chemicals on her at all, never do anything to her. Maybe just trim her feet, and that's it. And she'll give very, very nice milk. Very strong milk, full of vitality.
Clearly, Tom's cows are not going to tolerate being herded into conditions that treat them as pure milk-producing machines. And on the subject of their horns, it had already been explained to me in India how there exists a close connection between the complex digestive system of a cow and its horns, a memory of which is still retained in the horn even after the animal is no longer alive. Hence the use of horns as receptacles for the 2 biodynamic preparations, 500 and 501. At Tablehurst Farm, the 500 preparation, known as horn manure, having been stirred rhythmically for an hour, is now sprayed on the ground in spring and will continue to be applied during the summer. In the meantime, below the ground and throughout the summer are buried another batch of horns containing powdered silica. This substance, the preparation known as 501 or horn silica, is likewise stirred and then sprayed over the growing crops to regulate their receptivity to light and thereby improve their health, quality and vitality. In a nearby field, chamomile flowers are being picked by Peter Brown and his team. Chamomile is one of 6 plants, each carrying a particular function that is specially prepared and then introduced into the compost heaps along with nettles, oak bark, yarrow, dandelion and valerian, to enhance and regulate the process of fermentation.
Yeah, well, we're happy after these 3 months of drought, aren't we? Yeah.
A drought, yeah, oh yeah.
Even the rye behind us is not as high as it should be, is it? And that's because of the drought.
There are 12 people employed on Tablehurst Farm, plus 3 apprentices and 3 people with learning difficulties. I asked Peter Brown about the viability of biodynamic agriculture.
We're doing quite a lot of processing of products and selling direct to the customer. And that is what helps make it viable, and also gets a direct relationship with the customer and us as a group of farmers. And because we're doing the extra processing together with the farming, like we butcher the meat and sell it on the farm, and we make the wheat or the rye into flour, and we sell it to the local bakery, and that sort of doubles the price. It's ironic because, you know, there's so much, proportionately it feels like there's a lot of work goes into producing it, and then all you do is put it through the mill and you double your price. But that's what you have to do, though, to make it viable.
Driving the tractor is David Junghans. He attended a Steiner Waldorf school in his native Germany, then trained in conventional agriculture before coming to England to Emerson College to study biodynamics. I asked him what he understood by this word force, the idea that there is something invisible at work in the substances that make up the phenomenal world.
I think everyone has the experience of forces, hard forces, of love, for example, or of any kind of emotions. But they are not visible. It's only the physical carrier, actually, the human being, that makes it visible. And so it is in nature. Potassium is a carrier for a particular force, and so on and so on. So that's how I understand forces. Forces stand behind matter, and actually matter carries these forces into the physical world.
During my visit to what was clearly a thriving and truly mixed farm enterprise, someone remarked that old MacDonald seems to have got it right.